Chapter 1706. 1706. Mo Zhao thought about it and was confused. Gu Zijia's spiritual power was not high enough to perform something so powerful. How did she do it? He tried to avoid the strikes on the side of the riverbank while trying to solve his confusion. However, his confusion would remain unanswered, as Gu Shijiu would never explain it to him. Gu Shijiu pressed him with every step that she took. Her odd moves emerged in an endless flow, making it harder for Mo Zhao to avoid. He never thought that the fight would require his full strength, but after a few encounters with Gu Shijiu, he finally understood that he needed to put in all his efforts to win the fight. Otherwise, he would be injured by her. His power began to sink in. Finally, he was able to utilize all of his strength. His moves were getting more merciless and tricky. The fight by the riverbank became increasingly vigorous. An hour passed. Then another hour passed. The glacier was melted and frozen again multiple times over the fight. Also, the ice towers at the riverbank were greatly affected by their battle and shattered into powder. The surrounding ice walls started to crumble, causing snow slides from the tip of the iceberg. Slowly but surely, the appearance of the area had been completely altered. It looked like a battlefield now. Although the appearance changed, their wizardry barriers remained unaffected. Gu Shijiu could not use her teleportation technique and Mo Zhao could not run away from her. He wanted to escape. He knew that this was too risky a fight for him at this stage. Gu Zijia's body was surrounded by a faint glow throughout the battle. When his sword touched the halo, it only managed to bruise her, causing her to spit out a little blood. No vitals were harmed, so she could still fight. Whenever she had the opportunity to injure him, she could not care less about his sword that was aiming at her chest or her head. She whipped the flexible rope unsparingly, showing him no sense of mercy at all by giving him more and more injuries. Mo Zhao would not mind physical injuries. However, there seemed to be some incarnations on his wounds as well that could purify the devilish influence from his body. The pain seemed to pierce into his bones, and it felt 10 times more painful than a normal injury. Apparently, she was ready to die in the battle with him, but Mo Zhao was not. He tried to escape from the battle a number of times, but was halted by a barrier set up by Gu Shijiu. He finally knew that Gu Shijiu had also set up a wizardry barrier to prevent him from running away. Toward the end of the fight, he could no longer hold back his frustration. Gu Shijiu, what kind of spell have you performed here? He asked, loudly. Gu Shijiu was injured as well. There was some blood at the corner of her mouth. With a smirk, she threw him an icy glance. The spell that can prevent you from escaping. Mo Zhao, you will never make it out unless you kill me. Mo Zhao did not know what to say. He had tried several ways to escape, but all failed. There was a fierce and brutal look in his eyes. All right then, I will be sure to kill you. He put his escape plan aside and launched a series of savagely violent attacks at Gu Shijiu. He assumed that Gu Shijiu must have taken some pills that allowed her spiritual power to advance greatly. However, the effect of the pills would not last long, just like the power of demon disintegration Dharma. Although one's kung fu could be greatly increased by a few folds, the effects would not last longer than 2 hours. When the time came, he would slowly torture her. Surprisingly, none of them backed out in exhaustion even after 2 hours of intense battle. On the contrary to his expectation, the strength of her 7-colored ray grew even more vibrant. Chapter 1707. 1707. The dazzling battlefield marveled Mo Zhao. There were many injuries all over his body, and the power of the sorrowful souls became gradually weaker under the radiance of the 7-colored rays. He would most probably lose his life. Before, he was a little perplexed that Gu Shijiu chose to fight him alone rather than having her friends to help. Now he finally understood. The kung fu that Gu Shijiu used was very lethal. She was confident that she could win this fight. It was not easy for Mo Zhao to be reincarnated, so he certainly did not want to end his life here. He wanted to uncover some parts of the truth to distract her, but Gu Zijia's strategy became more and more brutal. Her strikes grew more frequent, leaving him no chance to say anything. There was no room for distraction. If he insisted on talking, his body would be split in half under her majestic rope, and he would never be able to put the pieces of his body back again. All of their attention was completely focused on the battle of life and death before them. None of them heard any sound from the outside of the wizardry barrier. There seemed to be a man, shouting out loud from outside the barrier. For the first time ever, Di Fui felt as though he was going crazy. On his way, waves of anxiety hit him continuously. He tried to increase his speed, but it was still too slow for him. The place was too far away. Di Fui did not expect them to end up in a place so far away. Both of them had only gone missing for 3 days, and yet they managed to end up where the glacier was, tens of thousands of miles away. Gu Zijia's body was prone to coldness, so that the place would be a significant disadvantage to her. Also, she was indeed not a match to Emo Zhao. Even with all his strength, Di Fui needed at least 3 hours to get to where she was. 3 hours were more than enough for any misfortunes to happen. He was too anxious to care about the obstacles along his journey and crashed into a few trees. He had even tried to contact her by using the jade tablet while he was on his way, but received no answer. She seemed to have made up her mind to fight Emo Zhao until the very end. She did not even call for help. Was Gu Shijiu trying to kill herself? Gu Shijiu, please do not do anything stupid. Even with all your spiritual power, you are still incomparable to Emo Zhao. You are only throwing away your own life. He finally made it to the deserted land of ice and found the place where the star chart had been showing him. From a distance, he could see the radiance of 7 colored rays bursting out in the air. There was also a mix of some red and multicolored light, battling against one another. Loud strikes could be heard in the distance, followed by the eye-catching gleams. The explosive sound was enough to shake the grounds. Many layers of ice were starting to break apart. The icebergs were crumbling, one by one. Fortunately, there was no one around to witness the fight. If the same battle happened in a populated area, the entire town would be destroyed by now. When Di Fui finally saw the gleaming 7-colored ray, his face turned pale. He knew how well Gu Zijia's kung fu was, so the 7-colored ray came as no surprise. However, it was the intensity that astonished him the most, as it should not be so bright and colorful. Unless her power had been significantly advanced, it was impossible for her to get the result. No power could be instantly increased to such a great extent in such a short time. Chapter 1708. 1708. There was a chance that Gu Shijiu was using some forbidden magic, like the demon disintegration dharma. The demon disintegration dharma could indeed achieve the same result, but the use of this power came with a high price to pay. After performing the spell, some would lose most of their spiritual power and become disabled. In the worst-case scenario, he or she would die right away. Di Fui had to stop her. There were ways to stop her from performing the demon disintegration dharma. From the looks of her 7-colored ray, her life seemed to be coming to an end. He had to stop her as soon as possible. He lunged forward abruptly, only to be bounced back by an invisible barrier. It must be a wizardry barrier. Di Fui was very skilled in breaking wizardry barriers. He was impatient of all this waiting, so he started to break in without recognizing the nature of the wizardry barrier. He chose to use the strongest way to make sure the barrier could be broken at his first attempt. A flash of white rays emerged as he proceeded to smash the barrier. The method was the most useful way that could be used to break through all kinds of barriers, like a multipurpose tool or master key. To his surprise, he only managed to tremble the barrier very lightly. It did not seem to break apart at all. He took a look at Gu Shijiu, who was now fighting violently within the barrier. All of a sudden, her body started to shake, as though she had just taken a great punch. Soon, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Emo Zhao seized the opportunity to attack her head-on, but she managed to turn around and avoid it. The wizardry barrier that Gu Shijiu made was rather strong. Looking in from the outside of the barrier, Di Fui could only witness the rapid battle by recognizing the vibrant flashes and shadows of swords. He could not see their faces, as they were standing too far away from the barrier. However, he could see that she spat out a mouthful of blood. He was immediately stunned and started to study the wizardry barrier. He touched the surface lightly with the tip of his fingers. There was a warm, familiar sense. Without a doubt, the barrier was set up by Gu Shijiu. However, the type of barrier that she used was nothing he had seen or heard about. The anima of the wizardry barrier was very intense, sending forth a delicate sense of her soul, as though the barrier was supported solely by the power of her soul. His facial expression changed abruptly. If the barrier was supported by the power of her soul, breaking the barrier was the same as launching an attack against her. Setting up a wizardry barrier by channeling one's soul was a very risky move. Anyone who wished to break the barrier would have to attack the soul from the one who set it up. If the barrier were placed at a location full of practitioners, it would be suicidal. When did she learn how to set up a wizardry barrier by channeling the power of her soul? He had never taught her so. There were only two possible ways to break the barrier: either the creator willingly disarms it, or the creator dies. Di Fuyi's hands started to tremble. He tried to perform the ground drilling technique, but it was impossible for him to penetrate through. Apparently, she sealed off the barrier from every possible corner. No one could ever make it through. Shijiu, open up the barrier. Let me in. He screamed out loud. His spiritual power allowed him to exert a great force for his voice to penetrate through the barrier. Regardless of the distance, be it a few miles or a few hundred miles, he was sure that his message would be conveyed. His voice reverberated from the heights of the land, like echoes in an empty valley. However, the two people in the wizardry barrier did not seem to notice him at all. He refused to give up and tried a few times more. He even used all sorts of abilities that he knew, but could not get her attention. The fight went on vigorously. Was the wizardry barrier soundproof? He could hear the sound of their battle. Was it only soundproof from the outside? Or was she trying to avoid distractions? Du Fui used to be able to stay calm and confident, no matter how serious the issue at hand was, but for the first time, he started to tremble helplessly as his anxiety took over his mind. Chapter 1709. 1709. It was a mess in the wizardry barrier. Di Fui tried to use a few milder methods to break the barrier, but they were useless. Instead, Gu Shijiu was hurt even more with his every attempt. It was so dangerous inside that she almost lost her arm under Mo Zhao's violent attacks. Blood started to flow from her wound, staining her entire left arm in red. Di Fui dared not make another move. He could no longer calm himself down. Driven by anxiety, his limbs went cold. It was the first time for him to know how fear felt like. His emotions were whirling in a chaotic jumble. He had lost his usual sense of thought. After contemplating for a while, he immediately contacted Long Sai. Although he had suspended Long Sai's status as a Heaven's Gift disciple, he did not confiscate his jade tablet. He hoped that Long Sai still kept it close to him. Luckily, Long Sai did not lose the jade tablet. He picked up the call immediately. Celestial Master Zhua, have you found Shijiu? Di Fui was not in the mood for some unnecessary small talk. Has she learned any unusual spell before? It is a spell that can channel the power of her soul to set up a wizardry barrier. He quickly briefed Long Sai about the characteristics of the barrier, hoping that Long Sai would have a clue. Long Sai's tone changed immediately. Where is she? Is she going after Mo Zhao? Is she risking her life to fight against him? Di Fui did not conceal any information from him. He answered with the exact location and their current situation before he continued, do you know about the wizardry barrier? How do I break it? Long Sai's voice ripped through the air. Di Fui, you are driving her to her death. She is ready to die with Mo Zhao in the fight. Di Fui took a deep breath. I am finding ways to save her. Tell me the way, so I can break through the barrier and get her out from danger. She is still alive right now. Long Sai answered in disbelief. Save her. I am afraid that there is no other way. The barrier was made from the soul-condemning spell. It will not be deactivated unless the creator is dead. What? What do you mean? Di Fuyi's voice started to tremble. There was no way he could tell if Long Sai was crying or laughing. She learned it from a great exorcist back in the modern days. The exorcist was a descendant of the Nuwa Empress. Her skill in exorcism was beyond compare. Shijiao stayed with her for some time to learn her kung fu, including the Holy Spirit Wizardry Barrier and the Soul Condemning spell. The two spells complement one another in a sequence. Once it is activated, it will immediately advance the creator's power by 5 folds, but it can only be deactivated when one of them, the creator or the opponent, dies. No outsider can play a part in the battle. Please, do not attempt to break into the barrier that she made. It would be the equivalent of attacking her. You will kill her, just like what Mo Zhao wishes. Di Fuyi's body froze. He could not get himself together. His ears started to buzz. He stared blankly at Gu Shijiao, who was currently fluttering in the air and fighting vigorously. He believed that she was aware of his presence. She was the one who made the wizardry barrier, how could she not notice it when someone attacked it? She could not care less. She did not even bother to turn her eyes to check it out. She seemed to be very determined to die. Had she lost all hope to live? She seemed to have let the past go. The way she looked at him was as though he was a stranger. She accepted him as a normal friend and even accomplished some tasks together just before this battle. He thought that she had already recovered from the past and started to become stronger on her own. He finally realized that she had only been acting. All she wanted was to kill herself. Long Sai lost all hope too. Di Fuyi, she loves you, so much that she is willing to do anything for you. Chapter 1710, 1710, Gu Shijiao always lacked love because she was born an orphan. Hence, she didn't trust anyone and always protected herself. She didn't want to be hurt, but she opened up to you. I've talked to her before she achieved a level 9 spiritual power. She told me she wants to work harder on her practice because she wanted to be with you forever as she didn't want you to be alone. When you came out of the Forbidden Land together, she came to visit me and couldn't stop talking about you. She was thrilled that time because she finally achieved a level 10 spiritual power and was able to fight side by side with you. She said she wanted to share your burden. At that time, she was living in heaven and never stopped dreaming about both of your future. Do you know why I was willing to give up? It's because of this. I knew she had completely fallen for you and she could never see anyone else anymore. Even if you die, she will follow you without turning back. Di Fuyi clenched the jade tablet tightly as he listened to Long Sai. Di Fuyi, she loved you so much, how could you be so cruel to her? You sent her up to the sky and then kicked her down to hell. Do you know how she lived these days? Do you know she hides everything in her heart and couldn't sleep every night? You've ruined all her confidence. Although she didn't tell me what exactly happened between the two of you, she had mentioned a little about it when she was still unconscious while swapping her body. She felt she was just a joke to you because she was a clone in her previous life and this life, and now even the soul was not hers. She was exhausted from living, perhaps, she shouldn't have come to this world. She knew you didn't want her anymore, but she still could not let you go. She was very sad, she didn't want to be a substitute. She said you wanted her to die because your beloved could not live if she doesn't die. Long Sai's words were like thousands of blades stabbing Di Fuyi's heart simultaneously. His face gradually turned pale. His body was trembling as his hands were placed on top of the barrier. He felt numb and weak to the extent that he almost fell to the ground. He looked at Gu Shijiao who was inside the wizardry barrier, and he realized her responses began to slow down. She has almost used up all of her power and energy. Mo Zhao was not in good condition either, however, he could continue to fight. It seemed inevitable that Gu Shijiao would die in Mo Zhao's hands. While Mo Zhao hated her to his blood and bones now, he would not only kill Gu Zijia's body once he wins the battle but also destroy her souls. By that time, that would be the end of Gu Zijia's life. Di Fuyi planned everything for her all these years. He has made so many sacrifices for her. He definitely would not accept such a result. A seven-colored light slowly formed in Difui's palms. He knew a divine power which could break the wizardry barrier. There was no wizardry barrier that it could not break because the destructive power was extremely strong. However, it would consume a lot of his power and energy. Hence, it has never used it before. Difui could not be bothered anymore. Perhaps, her life would be at risk when he broke her wizardry barrier, but he could safeguard her souls. He had a solution to resurrect her as long as her souls were complete. When Difui about to launch his power, he suddenly heard Mo Xiao laughed out loud in the wizardry barrier. Gu Shijiu, you've lost. You. Before he managed to finish his arrogant speech, he suddenly paused as he felt as though a sword sliced him. Difui immediately lifted his head, and he saw a scene which was horrible enough to make his soul scatter. The sword in Mo Xiao's hand poked into Gu Zijia's chest and penetrated through her back. At the same time, the rope in Gu Zijia's hand had gone into Mo Xiao's mouth and penetrated his head. A seven-colored light was shining all over the place as it engulfed Mo Xiao's body with a strong purifying energy. Chapter 1711, 1711 Gu Shijiu said with an icy tone as she gasped, "You're the loser." Mo Xiao's eyeballs were moving uncontrollably as he glared at Gu Shijiu angrily. He seemed to want to say something, but all that she could hear was a strange sound in his throat. He did not manage to say anything in the end. He slumped on the ground helplessly, his gaze was filled with sympathy and sadness. He was dead. The flexible rope was indeed a unique weapon which had a powerful effect of purification. It killed Mo Xiao's physical body as well as his soul's. Gu Shijiu stumbled forward, and her body also slumped on the snow. Almost the same time, the wizardry barrier had finally cracked. Difui rushed in and carried her. Shijiu. It would be fine. She would be fine. She has killed Mo Xiao, and there was only an injury on her chest. He could save her. She would be fine. His trembling fingers held on the sword which penetrated her chest. All the evil wraiths in the sword has been purified by Gu Shijiu. Difui used his spiritual power and the sword immediately vanished. Since Difui was very knowledgeable in the field of medicine, he knew the sword did not penetrate her heart but it did go through one of her organs. With a glance, he knew it was hazardous. He could quickly help her to reconnect all the broken vessels and make her survive. Don't worry, I'll save you. Shijiu, I'll save you. He carried her and pressed on her chest. His voice turned hoarse but he was still relatively firm. Shijiu, follow my spiritual power, I'll treat you. He was glad at the moment he rushed in. That was because the two people in the wizardry barrier had finally marked the end of the battle. Mo Xiao was dead while Gu Shijiu survived. He could not believe that she killed Mo Xiao alone with her power. Once again, she made another miracle. Nothing was more important than her survival. Thus, the very first thing Difui did when he came in was to treat her injury. His limbs were icy. Hence, he did not realize her body was already frozen when he first carried her. Only when he pressed on her chest and did not feel her familiar yet strong heartbeat did he realize something was wrong. Her body was very soft and cold. It was as if he was hugging a corpse. Although her wound was big, the bleeding was not that serious. How could this happen? Difui's fingers were shaky as he checked her breath and pulse. He almost could not sense her pulse, and she seemed to have stopped breathing. The end of her life. That was the end of her life. Gu Shijiu helplessly lied in his arms. She got slightly stiff when he hugged her as though she wanted to struggle. However, Difui was hugging her tightly, and she eventually gave up. However, both of her arms lied on her sides because she did not intend to return his hug. After all the hassles, she finally returned to his embrace. No one knew how much suffering she had gone through. Nobody knew how much hassles she has gone through to forget about it. Now, her heart was so painful when she returned to this embrace again. Her eyelashes trembled, and her gaze has finally stopped on his face. He was still wearing a mask with only his eyes exposed. As usual, his eyes were so charming, and she used to look at his eyes every time she lied in his embrace. Chapter 1712. 1712. Di Fui was undoubtedly a very handsome man. Gu Zijia's heart always raced every time he looked into her eyes. However, at that very moment, her heart no longer beat irregularly. Everything she saw was dark, and her vision was getting blurry. She could not see clearly, but she could feel that his eyes were now wet. Was he sad for her? Did he cry? Did he feel sympathy for her? Perhaps he did feel sad for her. However, she did not want his sympathy. What she wanted he could never give, while what he could give her now she no longer wanted. All she could hear was a buzzing and ringing sound. She could not hear anything he said. Di Fui was terrified because he realized that her vision was getting blurred and that she could not hear anything. Besides that, he could see a glow slowly spreading out from her body. That was a sign that her souls would soon disappear. His entire body was trembling because he knew he was going to lose her, and yet, he had no way to change it. Shijiu. Gu Shijiu. Please, don't give up. Shijiu, please stay. Listen to me, I didn't give up on you, you're always the one I loved. Shijiu, listen to me. Be a good girl, okay, listen to me. Gather your spirits with the soul condensation spell, I know you can do it. Wait until you recover, I'll slowly explain everything to you. Shijiu, while he was talking, he also tried his best to transfer spiritual power into her body so that blood could circulate again in her hardened blood vessels. He also used other spells and tried his best to collect her broken souls. Suddenly, Di Fui had an idea and removed his mask so that she could see his lips. He knew she could read lips, hence, she would know what he was talking about. Gu Shijiu smiled with her lips curved upward, but Di Fui soon realized that her gaze was on his hair. Her vision was blurred, but she could recognize his white hair. She reluctantly lifted her hand from her side, and her fingertips touched his silver hair. Her lips were moving as she mumbled softly. Di Fui managed to hear it clearly. I don't like you with white hair. I'm sad. When I saw that your hair turned white, he hugged her tightly. I'll make it black again. Shijiu, I'll make the white hair black again. Could you stay, please? His voice was trembling as he tried to negotiate with her and suppress his fear. Her fingers were still rubbing his hair, but everything in front of her had turned black. She felt droplets of warm water drip on her face. However, it could never warm up her frozen skin. Di Fui. She said gently. Are you crying for me? You should be happy after I die. I've tried my best to maintain this body. It's perfect now, don't worry. You can call that soul back after I die. However, if it returns with my memories, please remove them. I don't want to come to this world again, I don't want to be anyone's substitute. I'll give Lanjinka back to you. She could not see or hear anything anymore but only stared at the sky blankly. Although she had been fighting in the dark for so long, she hated it. Unfortunately, she was now helplessly engulfed by the dark. The unforeseen life has finally come to an end. Chapter 1713. 1713. Gu Shijiu once tried very hard to be immortal. Unfortunately, it was all just a dream now. She chose to die with Imo Zhao, to get revenge for her friends, and to kill a devil for the world. She had certainly proved her capabilities as well. Subconsciously, she wanted to prove her abilities in front of Di Fui. She wanted to show him that she was not that bad compared to Lanjinka. Why could he not try just to love her? Unfortunately, she did not bring it up even until the end because she felt that it was not true love if she had to beg for it. Since he only loved Lanjinka from the beginning until the end, she would return Lanjinka to him. She would fulfill his wish and her wish as well. Di Fui, I wish we will never see each other again, even in our next life. But, there was no next life for her anymore. She would disappear as her souls had to pay the price for forming that array. Back then, her exorcist friend just randomly mentioned about the array to her. However, she could not stop begging her friend to teach her that skill. Her friend felt helpless and he also thought she could never use it since she didn't even have any spiritual power, hence, he taught her all the theories and vital tricks. She only learned it out of curiosity, and she never expected that it could be used someday in the future. Perhaps, it was fate. However, it was not important anymore because everything would be gone soon along with her. Di Fui, I've never regretted falling in love with you. However, if I can ever choose again, I wish to have never met you. Her hands fell from his hair, and she slowly closed her eyes. A teardrop slowly rolled down from the end of her eye. Di Fui knelt on the ground. She could not hear any of his explanations, and none of the spells worked on her. The only thing he could do was to watch as she stopped breathing with her eyes closed. A few broken souls with 7 colored rays detached from her body and rose to the sky. Di Fui was very pale. He used all his power to collect the broken souls. Gu Shijiu, you can't just die. This is not your end. This shouldn't be your end. You haven't listened to my explanation, you didn't know you're the only one I love. No one else. Shijiu, give me a chance, please. Shijiu, please, don't be so cruel. Di Fui could collect souls. Regardless of who was the one died in front of him, he could collect all the souls as long as he wanted even if the souls disappeared in front of him. The only exception thus far was mermaid souls. Unfortunately, he could not collect Gu Zijia's broken souls too. Those 7 colored souls were untouchable. It slowly rose from his palms and influx into the snow and then to the sky. The snowflakes were flying in the sky as the wind blew. The lonely snow land seemed to be as cold as usual. Since the fierce battle, the appearance of the ice mountains, glacier, and ice towers had changed. Everything had changed. However, how many people would know the reason? Everything would go back to usual in due time. Non-living things would look the same every year even after decades, however, the only difference would be the people who looked at them. The ice mountain, the glacier, and the ice towers would appear again. What about humans? Would those who have passed away come back again someday? Di Fui had been sitting in the snow with her corpse for 3 days and nights until Long Sai arrived with the 4 messengers. Long Sai, who was usually always a polite person, almost cursed all of his ancestors. After he finished lecturing Di Fui that day, he did not hear a single reply from him. Chapter 1714 Di Fui had switched off the jade tablet, but Long Sai did not want to give up, hence, he tried to contact Di Fui again while rushing to find him. However, Di Fui refused to answer the call even though his jade tablet had blinked a few hundred times. He almost drove Long Sai nuts. Long Sai was not as powerful now, and he was before. Therefore, he could not set the speed of his vehicle to the maximum, otherwise, he would freeze to death. Fortunately, he bumped into the 4 messengers along the journey who were looking for their lord, hence, they were rushed over together. Long Sai had a bad feeling about everything, but he still tried to be a little hopeful. What if Gu Shijiu won the battle in the wizardry barrier? Perhaps, she would not die if she won the battle. Perhaps, Di Fui would treat her injuries. Perhaps. He went through the snow and wind with that small hope and finally found Di Fui and Gu Shijiu, who almost turned into 2 ice sculptures. Di Fui was sitting in the snow with his legs crossed. His whole body and face were covered by snow to the extent he looked like he had become part of the ice mountains. The one he hugged tightly in his arms was Gu Shijiu. Di Fui got her well taken care of as there was not even a single snowflake on her face. Her face was as white as snow, her lips were pale, her eyelashes were black, as though she was sleeping tightly in his embrace. Long Sai was shocked by the scene, and his mind went blank instantly. Certainly, he knew Gu Shijiu was dead because he was the medical expert in this era. She was dead even though her body was still soft and her appearance still looked exquisite. Di Fui's forehead was leaning against her forehead as if he was whispering to her. He carefully wrapped her in his embrace and used his body to block all the snow from her as though she would wake up soon and be fine. He knew that she liked to be in his embrace. However, he had not hugged her or let her rest in his arms since they had broken up. Now, He could hug her however he wanted. Unfortunately, she could never feel it anymore. Long Sai's eyes turned red. His blood was boiling and gushed up to his head. Without waiting any longer, he rushed over rapidly and hit Di Fui. Bast *RD. You've killed her. Are you happy now? In fact, the four messengers were shocked by the scene too. They were shocked because they did not expect Long Sai to have the courage to attack their lord. Unfortunately, it was too late when they were about to stop him. They quickly closed their eyes and waited for Long Sai to be thrown far away. After all, Long Sai's kung fu was too lousy compared to Di Fui's. It was not an exaggeration at all even if they described the differences between them as heaven and earth. Bang! Long Sai has indeed hit Di Fui's back. Di Fui's body slightly trembled and blood dripped from the edge of his mouth. Long Sai could not believe that he did not set any wizardry barrier to protect himself. The four messengers were equally stunned. Mu Feng was the first to respond. Thus, he immediately leaped to stop Long Sai who still wanted to attack Di Fui. Meanwhile, Mu Yun, Mu Dian, and Mu Lei quickly knelt in front of Di Fui. My lord. Di Fui's face was pale like an ice sculpture. His eyelashes were covered with snow, and he was sitting there motionless without saying a word as though he was dead too. None of the four messengers have their lord in such a state. Certainly, they were sad as well as Gu Shizhou passed away. However, they were panicked when they saw their depressed lord. Mu Yun moved forward as he knelt. My lord, let's go. Let's go, please. Chapter 1715. 1715 Mu Dian and Mu Lei gave their opinions. My lord, you shouldn't stay here for too long, let's head back. We'll figure out what we can do once we return. Mu Feng was very sad, but he still hoped the situation could be changed. My lord, you could collect her souls and then resurrect her, right? It was only now that Mu Feng realized how much his lord loved Gu Shizhou. So why did he choose to break her heart back then? Long Sai let out a loud, sarcastic laugh. Resurrect? Ha! How are you going to do it? Look! Her souls are all shattered. Di Fui, you know soul collection spell, you knew you could save her, but you just let her souls break into pieces. So, who are you trying to show your pitiful face to now? Don't you think it's disgusting? That was the first time someone dared to scold the Lord right to his face. Thus, Mu Feng grew angry and frustrated at Long Sai. Initially, he wanted to seal Long Sai's acupoint and make him mute, however, he managed to stop himself when he saw Di Fui's facial expression. Di Fui had not moved or changed his facial expression since they arrived, it was as if he had fallen into his own world and was isolated from everyone. He did not give a single response as if he had lost his mind. However, his lashes flashed when Long Sai cursed. At this point, Long Sai had gone all out. Di Fui, Shizhou told me that you wouldn't be able to resurrect your beloved if she doesn't die. Because of this, you were panicked until your hair turned white. Although I have no idea how she got this perception, it proved that you really gave her that kind of feeling because she said it in a dream. Now, she is fulfilling your wish and made your dream come true. Ha ha ha. Look, she is such an idiot, isn't she? So, just stop pretending and showing her your pitiful face. This body still looks good though it was injured before, you can use it to resurrect your beloved after healing the wounds, don't waste Zygius' effort anymore. Di Fui finally raised his eyelids slowly. There's no one else. He said. His voice was extremely hoarse and his gaze looked blank. It was a lie. She was always herself, not anyone else. Long Sai ran out of words. He grabbed his fists tightly as he fixed his gaze on Di Fui. Then why did you lie to her? Is it really fun to watch her being hurt? Long Sai yelled. Di Fui mumbled as he looked at her, yeah, I lied to her on purpose, I broke her heart on purpose. It's all my fault. Long Sai was getting angrier. He bit his teeth and finally launched an attack toward Di Fui. Di Fui. I know you've been a bastard all this time, but I didn't know you're also an asterisk shoal. That was a strong attack and plenty of ice and snow were tossed toward Di Fui's face at the same time. Mu Yun was finally pissed off. He could forget about the attack from Long Sai earlier, but how could he do that again? Did he really think that everyone could simply insult the Lord? Without waiting for another second, Mu Yun launched a beam toward Long Sai with the intention to force Long Sai to withdraw his attack for self-protection. Mu Yun had already achieved a level 10 spiritual power, hence, Long Sai would not be able to take it if the ray hit him directly. He would probably spit out blood while being tossed away. Suddenly, a white shadow flashed and stopped between Mu Yun and Long Sai. Mu Yun's attack did not manage to fall on Long Sai, but it hit the white shadow instead. At the same time, Long Sai also hit the white shadow rather than Di Fui. Crack! Bang! Two loud sounds were produced. The white shadow immediately swayed. Mu Yun's expression changed instantly. "My lord," shouted Mu Yun with a trembling voice. Chapter 1716. 1716 Di Fui had been attacked front and rear and his face was as pale as snow with blood dripping from the edge of his lips. However, Gu Shijiu, who was still in his embrace, looked perfect. Di Fui had turned around and left when Mu Yun was about to rush over. "He is protected by Shijiu, don't you dare offend him." Long Sai was shaking as he stood still. The despair on Di Fui's face does not look fake, so why did he do this? Why would he get himself into all that trouble? Long Sai was getting furious as he watched Di Fui walk further away. He yelled, "Di Fui, why did she get to know you in the first place? It would be great if she did not know you at all. You got involved with her first but then you dumped her away for no reason. Did you dump her just to watch her die? How unlucky is she to meet you? If she could go back in time, I'm sure she will not ever want to meet you again." Di Fui stumbled for a second. However, he did not turn back and soon he was gone. His lonely shadow was buried in the snow and perhaps would never be seen after that. Long Sai was not the only one who had a lot of questions in his head, the fourth messengers were curious too. Why? Why did the Lord do all that? The starry sky shone brightly tonight. There were so many of stars above the sky. Every now and then, there will be stars that are born and there will be stars that disappear. But does anyone notice this? Originally, there were two big bright stars in the sky. However, one has gone and the other was about to fall any time now. In a blue garden, all kinds of flowers were blooming. There were two rocking chairs in the garden. At that moment, the two rocking chairs were parallelly placed next to each other and the two people were also lying on the rocking chairs side by side. One was wearing a purple robe with black hair while the other was wearing a green dress with long black hair as well. One was a male and the other was a female. Unfortunately, one was alive and the other was dead. Those were Di Fui and Gu Shijiu. One of Di Fui's hands wrapped her in his embrace while the other hand was holding her hand tightly. That was the intimate interaction they used to have when they were deeply in love. However, he has not done this for a long time. Their fight eventually caused her collapse as she struggled to adapt to life without him. He was similarly sad and he even had to stop his desire of pulling her into his embrace. Finally, he could now hug her as long as he wished and enjoy the starry sky together. In fact, he knew that she was always looking forward to this. Unfortunately, he could not fulfill her dream when she was alive. Tragically, she will not know anymore. He heaved a sigh of grief as his broken heart cramped. "Shijiu, let me teach you about astrology, okay? I actually wanted to teach you about this a long time ago, but I just did not have the courage to do so until today." Di Fui whispered. They looked very lovely at that moment with Gu Zijia's head rested on his collarbone. "Shijiu, do you see that big star? It is the king's star and it represents the king of this world." "Yeah, this is the one I've once shown you before. At that time, I cast a spell to make it look bright and shiny. In fact, it was going to fall soon." "Shijiu, do you remember there was another bright star which was almost as bright as the king's star and you said you wished it could be the star that represents you? Ironically, that is you. You were supposed to be the new king star. Shijiu, the sky could not have two suns and the people would not need two kings. No one could change it because this is the natural principle of the world. Di Fui whispered softly while looking up to the sky. Chapter 1717, 1717, When the new king's star rises, the old one will fall. I already knew it since 20 years ago. I knew that I am going to fall after 100 years while the new king's star will be born. Thus, I had to train the new king's star and then immortalize her after passing all the responsibilities to her. I have been living for more than 10,000 years, hence, I have already gotten used to matters about life and death. Thus, immortalization is nothing to me because I don't really care much about it. However, the only regret I have is never falling in love with someone even though I have witnessed so many legendary love stories. In fact, I'm eager to know how it feels like to truly fall in love with someone and experience the feeling of being lost in someone's embrace. Di Fui continued, although there are so many girls out there, there is no girl that ever walked into my heart. I did not make any compromises either. The only thing I could do was to wait for the new king's star to be born. The moment when Gu Shijiu from General Gus' family had been born, something strange happened in the sky. There were some glows of 7-color rays out there. At that time, I was wondering if she was the new king's star, so I went there to check it out. I realized that she had a normal physique and a normal look. Furthermore, the 7-colored ray disappeared. I checked on her a few more times and it still turned out to be the same. So, I concluded that she is just a normal baby. I foresaw that this girl will face a huge life or death situation when she turns 12 years old, and there was a low possibility that this girl can pass through this trouble. Di Fui covered Gu Shijiu with an extra piece of clothing while he was talking. At that time, even though I thought that she was not going to be the new king's star, I did not lose hope on her yet. That time, her mother wished to keep her safe, so she begged me to get engaged with her daughter. At that time, I did not care about marriage, and I did not think that she could survive through the fatal situation awaiting her when she turned 12. So I accepted the request of her mother, to get engaged with her even though she was just a baby. I had put a seal on her and changed her facial appearance by growing spots on her forehead. The terms and conditions of the marriage were very harsh as I did not think that she could make it. But somehow, she was possessed by you after she died. Maybe this is what we call destiny. God made you appear in this form. Do you still remember the first day we met? I turned myself into a jade statue to practice asceticism, and that time you came in and took off my clothes, and you even touched me. At that time, I was very angry and amused because it was the first time that I have been molested by someone. So I have decided to find you and take revenge. Shijiu, you were as sneaky as a catfish, you always had ways to escape from me. You also successfully drew my curiosity. That was the first time I got so curious about someone. So, at that time, I could not let you go. I even cast a spell on you just to look at how you escape from me. Your moves always impressed me. Perhaps that was when I fell for you. After that, you called yourself a Heaven's Gift disciple. I had to test you as it was my job. Actually, before I tested you, I already knew that you were not a Heaven's Gift disciple. But I had to run the test as it was my job. I fell in love with you at that time, and could not risk your safety. So, I decided to go easy with you on the stage. The result was that you are really not a Heaven's Gift disciple but a disciple of the Lord. Di Fui looked at the stars again as his mind was traveling back in time. Shijiu, I was already falling in love with you at that time, and I was thinking to marry you after you get out from the dark forest. I wanted to run away with you and was counting how many years we had left. I could still live for nearly 100 years and predicted that you could live until around 80 years old. Chapter 1718, 1718, I loved you, and I knew that I could be with you until the very end. After you pass away, I will be immortalized. But we will have a whole life to stay together, just like an ordinary couple. But Shijiu, I never thought that you were the new king's star. At that time, I turned myself into Sichin to be with you and help you navigate out of the dark forest. In the dark forest, you did something that only a new king's star is capable of. You could see the starry sky in the dark forest, and you were also capable of seeing the different colors of 8 mountains. At first, when I came to know your identity, I was very shocked and disappointed. Of course, I was happy for you, but I had to change my plan because of your identity. You were no longer immortal, you are the new king star. This meant that your lifespan would be as long as mine. If I marry you, the 100 years of our marriage will just be a small number to you. After the 100 years, you will be sad as you will witness my departure. After that, in your long-lasting lifespan, maybe you will meet someone new who could run away with you. Di Fui held her hand and said, Shijo, I was very selfish at that time because you were the only woman I loved in my entire life, and I wanted to be the only man you loved in your life. I don't want to see another man enter your life after I passed away. If that were the case, I'd rather let you go. So Shijo, I wanted to let you go that time, and I really did that. I just wished to protect you and let you grow up as the Lord. But Shijo, I failed. I wanted to hold back my feelings but I could not. I wished to see you, but when I saw you with Long Sai, I started to get jealous. Long Sai is a Heaven's Gift disciple. According to the rules of this world, the 4 Heaven's Gift disciples that reach level 9 will fall with the old King Star. In other words, Long Sai and a few of them will be following me to our doom. So at that time, I stopped Long Sai from falling in love with you. I even hoped that you loved me instead of Long Sai. Shijo, I was in a dilemma. My mind wanted me to let go of you, but my emotions kept finding excuses to be with you. You surely thought that I was crazy. Di Fui stared at Gu Zijia's face. He sighed. Shijo, I admit that I am selfish. It was not easy for me to fall so deeply in love with someone. I did not want to let go so easily, and at that time, you said that you did not care whether love lasted for a long time, you just wanted to fall in love before it's too late. I admit that I felt calmer after you said this. I've seen a lot of relationships become weaker after marriage. Couples would fight with each other and decide not to love anymore. I was thinking, maybe years after our marriage, we might lose the passion too, maybe we will break up before I fall. So I decided that I want to treasure the moment now and be selfish, and I am going to get you by my side. After that, you finally realized that you had fallen in love with me and decided to be with me. I really treasured this opportunity and agreed to get engaged with you to make you my fiancé. But I never thought that the love bracelet would show up at that time. I was very happy as the appearance of love bracelet, which meant that our relationship is predestined, a predestined love is blessed. I started to think that I have chosen the right one, even God wants us to be together. In the beginning, I did not care about death, but as I spent more time with you, I started to hope that I can live longer so that I can be with you. Chapter 17:19, I even thought that it's fine if I'm not the Lord, I'll just stay by your side as your husband. I thought the love bracelet would change my destiny of falling, and I did try my best to find other solutions. However, there was no other way. I couldn't find any workable solution. Perhaps, Di Fui and Gu Shijiu were not supposed to love each other. Perhaps, it was a challenge which the new King Star ought to go through. She faced plenty of challenges and problems, but he could not just watch her suffer without doing anything because he cared about her. In fact, he had used a few forbidden spells to save her from those troubles, and that shortened his lifespan. Initially, he could still live for 100 years. However, a lot of his power and energy was consumed after using the forbidden spells. Later, when Gu Shijiu was kidnapped by Mo Zhao and her body was exchanged, his projected lifespan was less than 30 years. At that time, they really loved each other so very much. He was reluctant to let her go. Therefore, he began to arrange everything for his death. He knew that she would be extremely sad when he passed away some years later, and she would probably be caught in a depression for a very long period. While the only way to prevent her from being depressed was to make her forget about him and begin a new life. At that time, Gu Shijiu coincidentally changed to a clone body. It was quite a good body, and it could also be used for more than 30 years. But something happened to that cloned body which made Gu Shijiu need to return to her original body. Therefore, Di Fui used his spiritual power to perform a spell on her original body. The spell could make Gu Shijiu forget everything about Di Fui when she resurrected. Then, she would be a new person. The relationship between Lan Jingke and Di Fui was exactly the same as what Di Fui told her. Lan Jingke was just his friend and they never fell in love with each other. No one could find her souls once she was dead. The reason Di Fui implanted Lan Jingke's memories into Gu Zijia's body was that her body could only survive and upgrade automatically in the Sea Palace. He needed a logical reason to make the Lan siblings safeguard Gu Zijia's original body. Besides that, since Shijiu would be the new lord and would eventually need to rule the mermaids, it would be advantageous to her if she had part of Lan Jingke's memories and continued to be the empress as Lan Jingke. It was equivalent to owning the whole mermaid kingdom without war, and at the same time, she would have a very strong team. Di Fui did not plan for her to lose all of her memories. She would still remember that she was Gu Shijiu. However, she would never remember him and he would never be in her memories anymore. In her heart, he would be just a passerby to her. She could be the empress of the mermaids if she was willing to be, otherwise, she could continue fighting on the land until she takes over the throne of the Lord and become the strongest person in the world. Di Fui had everything well planned and everything was under his control. Unfortunately, Gu Shijiu fled away and ran into a forbidden land, while he also took a risk and entered the forbidden land just to find her. They got married and stayed by each other's side as husband and wife for 8 years in the forbidden land. However, the world was already in chaos when they were out. He just impulsively wanted to stay by her side and be trapped in the forbidden land for 8 years, that indirectly led to the people suffering from the disasters caused by counterfeit celestial masters Wa. In fact, it was very serious misconduct from the Lord. Coupled with the fact that he and Gu Shijiu killed a fairy from the heavens when they tried to save the people, he received a new punishment from the heavens. After all the rewards and penalties, Di Fui only had 1 year left to live. Chapter 1720. Initially, Di Fui planned to spend a good year with her and then let her return to her original body when it was about time for him to fall. Unfortunately, he did not expect her clone body to encounter a heavenly penalty and turn into a monster that could absorb spiritual power from the people around her. Besides that, the conditions seemed to be getting worse. People will start seeing her as a monster as time went by. Thus, it was also harmful to her soul if she continued to stay inside that body, and it was possible for her to lose control over her mind as well. The only way to save her was to let her return to her original body. Thus, Di Fui sent her back after spending a day with her in the Crystal Palace. Before this, he had applied a spell on her original body, hence, he thought that she would not remember him anymore when she returned to her original body. He thought they would never have the opportunity to interact anymore, and the most he could do was to safeguard her secretly and help her to kill Mo Zhao. Therefore, he left right after he sent her to the Sea Palace so that he could get busy with all the work he needed to accomplish in order to return her a peaceful world. He thought that when they met again, he would be just another stranger to her. To his surprise, Gu Shijiu had left a special marking on her souls, and she would never lose her memories again. Although she resurrected in her original body, she did not lose her memories. She still remembered him. She ruined all his plans. Because Gu Shijiu had a love bracelet on her wrist, she would be able to tell if Di Fui had died. He could never hide it from her if he did not get rid of the love bracelet from her wrist. Therefore, he was forced to change his plan, and that was how Lan Jingke was involved in causing Gu Shijiu heartbreak. He knew that she was a strong and passionate girl and she would never be one's substitute. Thus, she would definitely ask for a divorce when she finds out he loved someone else. To his sadness, he finally achieved his goal. Gu Shijiu asked for a divorce, and the love bracelet finally disappeared from her wrist. She was in pain, and he did not feel good either. It was the pain of being apart and the pain of saying the last goodbye. In fact, it was very difficult to tell which one was worse than the other. She loved him more than herself, hence, Di Fui knew that she would probably follow him if he dies. However, she was the new lord. Logical speaking, she would not die and her wish might not even come true even if she committed suicide. She would be alive, and she would live for several centuries like a zombie and bury herself in pain for a long period of time. However, Based on her personalities, if she was betrayed, the first thing she would do was to grow stronger instead of committing suicide. Just like what she experienced when Long Sai betrayed her. She just wanted to be stronger and live to shine. Based on Gu Zijia's characteristics, she would get over it very fast, though she would be depressed from the betrayal. However, she would shine brighter after several years and probably fall in love with someone better and forget about everything between her and Di Fui. Di Fui's plan was almost similar to Mo Zhao's analysis. He broke up with her by using the betrayal strategy so that she would hate him and refuse to listen to any news about him. Therefore, she would never know when he dies. He would arrange for the 4 messengers to camouflage him and show up in public once every decade after he passed away as a feint of him being still alive. However, since Gu Shijie would him, she would not pay much attention to him. By the time Gu Shijie would find out about his death, it could already be a few thousand years later. The sky in the Crystal Palace was always blue. Di Fui was walking on a street covered with crystals, and he passed by many basilicas in the Crystal Palace as he carried Gu Shijie in his arms. This place belonged to him, and her, and their footprints could be traced in every single spot of the palace. There was a phrase, Tian Chang Di Jiu, engraved on a crystal. Some of the engravements were done by him and her. Di Fui and Gu Shijie, there was a big heart with both of their names inside it along with a silver arrow that penetrated the heart. Di Fui had said that it was not a good sign when he looked at it as the arrow penetrated the heart, but Gu Shijie told him that was the arrow from a cupid which represents the eternal love for the two of them. Shijie, I thought my plan would be the best way forward for you, but... Shijie, do you regret knowing me? Honestly, I regret. If I didn't tease you when we just met, we might not end up suffering this great tragedy, and you wouldn't be as hurt like this. Shijie, you don't know that I've never failed you before this. Shijie, I'm really sorry, it's my fault. Shijie, I didn't like this place originally. However, I fell in love with this place since I brought you here. I even wanted to immortalize myself here and slowly disappear. He continued walking with her in his arms, and finally, they arrived in a well-decorated room. That was the most beautiful bride chamber in the world, and it was once her favorite places. Both of them spent their happiest day in there, and it was also the one last time they loved each other. Shijie. Di Fui carefully placed her on the bed and lied beside her. Shijie, you've hinted me several times to propose to you because you wanted to marry me. I'm such a jerk and always pretended and neglected your wish. You must be so disappointed. I owe you a grand wedding. Am I still qualified to propose to you? He held her hand, but she was still lying there with no response. Her eyes were closed as if she was sleeping soundly. However, he understood, he knew she would never come back anymore. He took out a ring, it looked so beautiful and fine with a gem that was as bright as a star. Shijie, do you still remember this ring? You left this ring behind when you fled away from the wedding. I've been keeping it. After we broke up, I always look at it whenever I missed you. He paused when he said that and then reluctantly smiled as he put the ring on her finger again. Shijie, you look so beautiful with this ring. Di Fui's voice was rather hoarse. Slowly, he held her hand and placed a kiss on the back of her hand. He then put on another ring on his own finger and held her hand tightly. The shadow from the candlelight was twinkling, and both of their shadows were reflected on the bed drape as if it was their wedding night and they were back to the honeymoon period. He hugged her in his embrace as he slowly closed his eyes. Why the **CK did you do that if you knew this is the ending? A golden sentence flashed across Di Fui's mind. It was the firmament stone. It was still coiled on Gu Zijia's wrist. It was sleeping as if it was recuperating, but it had awakened recently. Di Fui could always interact with it. The firmament stone used to utter weird and hurtful things to Di Fui whenever they met. In fact, Di Fui would have sealed its spiritual consciousness and let it continue to hibernate if nothing serious happened. However, regardless of what it said these few days, Di Fui quietly listened without arguing or interrupting as though he was punishing himself with it. My lord, in fact, you deserve this. Since both of you escaped from the Forbidden Land, you shouldn't have broken up with her. I knew the secret of you falling shouldn't be revealed because all the karma would fall on her if it were to be leaked out. However, you could still spend a year with her and both of you would have had a very happy year. Di Fui remained silent. Indeed, he should have done this if he could be selfish. 1 year later, he could escape from heartbreak because he would know and feel nothing when he immortalizes. However, what about her? She would probably collapse when she finds out her beloved just passed away all of a sudden. If a couple was meant to go through such a cruel experience of being apart forever, the one who passes away would be free, but the one who was alive would be suffering. Especially in this case when Gu Shizhou would live for a long time, the pain and grief would continue until the end of her life. He did not want her to experience such cruel pain, hence, he decided to carry out his plan. Perhaps it was destiny, and there was nothing Di Fui could do about it. My lord, I heard your inner voice. In fact, you did it for her good sake. I'm sure she will be very happy and forgive you if she knows it. Even until the moment before she died, the thing she cared about the most is you, even though you told her you did not love her and you took her as a replacement. She fought with Mo Zhao in that manner because she wanted to fulfill your wish, as she did not want to see your hair turn white because of this matter. She always said that she hated you. In fact, she still couldn't let you go and she still wanted to make your dream come true. Di Fui closed his eyes in disappointment. The firmament stone was right, she would not sacrifice for him if she really hated him. She sacrificed herself just to give away the body so that he could get Longjinka back. If she could be slightly more selfish or hate him a little bit more, the ending might be different, but she still loved him wholeheartedly. His heart felt as though it was penetrated by a thread that was slowly pulled tighter and tighter. He held her little hand tightly as there was nothing else he could do. Her little hand was freezing, so he tried to warm it several times, but none of the attempts worked. Hey, my lord. Are you going to just stay here forever? It's chaos out there. You need to go out and calm them down. Di Fui's eyes remained closed. What does it have to do with him? Even though there was a disaster outside, Gu Shizhou was gone, everything was meaningless to him regardless of whether the world was in peace or chaos. There were only 5 more months to go. He would stay beside her for the coming 5 months because he did not want to be apart from her anymore. He would not let anyone disturb them until the day he immortalizes. The firmament stone seemed to have read his mind. In a panicked state, it shouted, My lord. You can't do this. The new lord is dead, and if you just immortalize this way, the entire world would collapse, and everyone would die. The firmament stone immediately leaped into midair and continuously spun in the air with an image projected in the air. Inside the image, volcanoes erupted, many meteorites fell from the sky with a lot of dust that covered the sky and the sun. The day turned into a dark sky, and there was no sunrise. Most of the ground was covered by the sea water, and the victims who were trying to escape were not only flushed away by lava but also hit by the meteorites and drowned in the floods. It was a scene of the apocalypse. The firmament stone was very patient. My lord, look, this is the scene after you immortalize. You've been safeguarding this continent for more than 10,000 years, would you not miss it even if you don't love it? I'm sure you wouldn't want it to be destroyed, right? Di Fui still remained silent as though he was meditating. The firmament stone circled his body as it blinked. It played another scene for Di Fui which showed the little fox and Yan Chen. Yan Chen and Lan Weihu should have gotten back together, but they were trying to escape from a collapsed ground. However, who could escape from such a terrifying disaster? Although they had very good kung fu, it was not sufficient. Yan Chen flew away from the ground with Lan Weihu and they managed to avoid the lava and floods. However, they did not manage to escape from the falling meteorites, and Yan Chen was hit by a giant rock and crashed on the ground when he tried to save Lan Weihu. He fell into a pool of lava while Lan Weihu screamed aloud as she watched the scene. Brother Yan Chen. Eventually, she jumped into the lava too. Occasionally, Qian Lingyu, Bailey Su, Luo Zhanyu, Gu Xietian, Luo Xinglan, and many others appeared in the scene. Many people from Tianju Hall and some of Gu Zijia's friends and relatives were engulfed by all the disasters one by one. It was extremely disgusting and cruel. The firmament stone also added extra audio. My lord, do you really not care about these people? Shijo cares about them very much. Although they don't deserve to die, they have to die, just because of the love between you and her. I'm sure Shijo would be so guilty and sad if they die this way. Di Fui shifted his gaze on the clip as though he was thinking about something. The firmament stone thought the opportunity has come. Thus, it changed the clip. This time, Mu Feng and the other 3 messengers were there with the Lord's maidservants. Certainly, the 4 messengers were important to him, however, the maidservants were also loyal to him and many other people have risked their lives for him. Unfortunately, none of them made it through disasters. They have tried so hard to improve their spiritual power in order to be his servant, hence, they certainly did not want to die this way. They screamed in fear and many of them would shout, "Help us, Celestial Master Zhua." Many scenes right before they died were paused and then zoomed in to enlarge their face. It was intended to show Di Fui their expression. My lord, do you also not care about these people? Di Fui looked pale but he still remained silent. Although he was immune to life and death, he still cared about those people in the clips and believed that they did not deserve to die. He could neglect his life, but how about those people? Di Fui shifted his gaze back to the firmament stone. His gaze was firm and sharp, hence, the firmament stone immediately took a few steps back. My lord, why do you stare at me this way? I just didn't expect you to know so much. The firmament stone was an arrogant jade, but it was quite humble in front of Di Fui. I am the firmament stone though. I know most of the things in the world. Can you see the future? The firmament stone blinked. A little. Di Fui's voice turned icy. So, you already knew what Shijo would go through today? The firmament stone was shocked. No. No. Her action was beyond my imagination. I really didn't expect that. In fact, I never thought that she would die. Di Fui's eyes sparkled. You really think this way too? Of course. She is the new lord, the new master of this world. Logical speaking, she wouldn't have died no matter what. Di Fui's gaze looked dim again. It was right, logical speaking, the lord wouldn't die unless it was time to go. Back then, he had gone through several very dangerous situations. However, he made it through every single time and even improved his power every time. Sometimes, he was too bored with life, hence, he even thought of killing himself. From there, he experienced some difficulties and pain but he could never die. The only way was for the omen to replace him. My lord, in fact, I'm also wondering about this. The future lord could be killed by the omen before she is mature, but she is supposed to be blessed by the heavens once she achieved a level 10 spiritual power. She is not supposed to die before the time comes. However, she is dead this time and this is strange. The firmament stone circled around Gu Zijia's body and coiled on her wrist for a while. She is really dead, I cannot feel her soul. Di Fui looked at her in his embrace. In fact, he did not believe that she was really dead. He had tried to call her soul several times before but did not receive any response. There were only 3 possibilities for this condition. Firstly, she was dead. Secondly, she was reborn. Lastly, she had immortalized. However, he witnessed her souls broken in his embrace. It was impossible for her to still be alive. Also, it would take time for her to be reborn. Especially for those whose souls had broken into pieces, they had to gather their souls in order to reborn. Next, they needed to pass the bridge of helplessness and drink Mimpa soup. In fact, the process would take at least half a year to complete. Anyway, her souls were gone. While the third possibility did not seem to fit her case. Immortalization only happens when one's power was ranked at the level of a deity. This was non-reversible and would only happen when the time was right. According to what he knew, a deity would completely disappear once he or she immortalizes. He would disappear from this world and not even a single soul would be found. Gu Shizhou was yet to be a deity and it was not her time to leave yet, hence, it was impossible for her to immortalize. The three possibilities were flawed and Di Fui seriously had no idea what was happening. Since Di Fui was deeply in shock, he had been living a messy life recently and was lazy to use his brain. The only thing he wanted to do was to make the world her funeral companion. However, he began to doubt her death since the firmament stone pointed out the information. He looked at the firmament stone and recalled its origin was so special when it came to Gu Shijiu. Besides that, it was Gu Zijia's little advisor and it had some unique functions. Since this fellow was quite chatty and annoying, Di Fui often sealed its consciousness when they spent time together. He did not pay much attention to it since he knew it was not harmful to Gu Shijiu. Finally, he realized this jade was not as simple as he thought. Suddenly, Di Fui focused his full attention on the firmament stone. The firmament stone shivered as he stared at it. Why did you come to Shijiu in the first place? Di Fui suddenly asked. The firmament stone immediately went stiff. It was a fate. Di Fui suddenly grabbed it. I want the truth. He grabbed it tightly until the firmament stone suffocated and screamed. Let go. Let go. Watch your action when you talk to an auspicious jade. Otherwise, you will be punished by heaven again. Di Fui immediately looked at it and caught the key point. Punished by heaven again? What do you have to do with heavenly law? The firmament stone remained silent. It immediately reversed. Don't know. What's heavenly law? Di Fui remained silent as he stared at it, but his gaze turned cooler now. The firmament was panicked. It was worried that he would squash it into dust if he was upset. It's related to a heavenly secret, I can't tell you. Di Fui was speechless. He did not expect there was any heavenly secret which he was not aware of. Di Fui refused to let it slide. You already knew she was the new lord when you found her, right? The firmament stone was speechless. Have you disclosed any heavenly secrets to her? This time the firmament stone was very responsive. Of course not. Otherwise, she will be punished. You should know better, right, my lord? Di Fui closed his eyes to think. He was so used to getting everything he wanted, hence, he did not really care about any heavenly punishment. He has also disclosed heavenly secrets and got punished before, but it had all been settled. However, the heavenly punishment would not only fall on the one who disclosed the secret but also on the listener. There would be a tragedy that would ensue. Therefore, Di Fui would never disclose any heavenly secrets to the people he cared about in order to prevent them from being punished. The firmament stone was worried that Di Fui blamed it for causing Gu Zijia's soul to fade away. It quickly explained. I know what to say and what not to say, I've never told her heavenly secret. Di Fui stopped talking, he closed his eyes as he hugged Gu Shijiu tightly. The firmament stone carefully circled around him again as it looked at his posture. My lord. You shouldn't continue sleeping anymore. The world is a mess now, all the disasters I showed you would happen if you continue to behave this way. What should I do then? Di Fui opened his eyes. There are 5 more months to go. Do you think the heavens would assign another new lord with a level 10 of spiritual power again? Perhaps? The firmament stone hesitated to continue. I feel, you should check the stars. Di Fui stared at it for a while. Did you sense something again? The firmament stone immediately ran away. I can't disclose. Di Fui came to the backyard again with Gu Shijiu. He was stunned when he looked at the starry night. There were dark clouds in the sky and he found a strange star in the clouds. It was a 5-colored star, though it looked big, it was quite dim. Apparently, it was surrounded by dark clouds, hence, it could not shine. That was a substitute lord? To his surprise, there was a substitute lord. It seemed that heaven did not want this continent to be destroyed. Di Fui clenched his fingers as he looked at Gu Shijiu who was in his embrace. The throne of the new lord belonged to her. The firmament stone was so excited. My lord, look, there's a substitute lord. You just have to find him or her and pass everything on, then the world would be saved. Therefore, my master would not get a mess when she returns. Di Fui was shocked. What did you just say? Your master returns. Oh, F***ck. The firmament stone was panicked. Damn it. It seemed to have disclosed a heavenly secret. The firmament stone took a few steps back. I meant our new lord. There would be a new lord sooner or later. The substitute lord could only take over for 300 years, right? Di Fui grabbed it as he grunted. Are you sure you don't want to tell the truth? Did the firmament stone take him for a fool? The firmament stone still refused to spill the beans. My lord, heavenly secrets are always highly confidential and are not allowed to be disclosed. Otherwise, you will face a tragedy. I'm not afraid. Tell me. Don't you forget that I can also predict heavenly secrets, hence, it's not considered as leaking even if you tell me. You've gone against the heavenly laws several times now, that's why you're not aware of this. The firmament stone was upset as it answered. Di Fui looked at it with an icy gaze. So what you showed me earlier is not a heavenly secret? The firmament stone could not respond. That was just a forebode. That shows the consequences if you continue to waste your time. Di Fui remained silent as he stared at it. Did it mean to say that incidents which were possible to happen would not be considered as a heavenly secret? Who the **ck was this idiot trying to fool? Did it really think that Di Fui did not know the meaning of a heavenly secret? The firmament stone became more concerned as the conversation went on. Finally, it told part of the truth. Since my master is the new lord, she would not immortalize or die before the end of her life. She committed suicide using a forbidden spell without approval, and that is considered against the heavenly laws because she destroyed the world's balance, hence, she deserves punishment. The punishment of the heavenly law is to let her reborn after several years with all of her memories, and she would know that you had fallen. Besides that, she would have nightmares about the past every single night so that all of her memories would feel as though it just happened yesterday. That was too ruthless. Di Fui's face turned pale. Carry on. The firmament stone did not hide anything anymore. If you just leave the world behind and cause it to be destroyed, she would need to oversee a disastrous continent when it's time for her to take over. All of her friends would be dead, and she would live with regret and hatred. What is worse than being restricted from dying and being tasked to rebuild the entire continent until the heavens are satisfied with her performance? Only then would she be allowed to die and finally be free from suffering. Di Fui was extremely angry. Crack. A strong table beside Di Fui was broken into pieces. I was the one who broke the rules. Why should she deserve the punishment? The firmament stone trembled and agreed. You're right. It's indeed unfair. It also thought the heavenly laws were too harsh. It was helpless and sincerely felt that was too much for its master. Di Fui closed his eyes, and his fingers were moving in his sleeves as if he was trying to predict something. A moment later, he opened his eyes, and his gaze fell on the firmament stone. I think the heavens got you to threaten me with her safety. The firmament stone remained silent. Perhaps it was true. The firmament stone did have such a doubt too. It carefully asked, so, are you? Di Fui hated to be threatened, and no one would succeed in threatening him. Moreover, he has been breaking the rules for so many years, why would he obey this time? What should I do? Di Fui seemed to be more relaxed now. The firmament stone heaved a sigh of relief. My lord, listen to me. It then told him a series of tasks while Di Fui quietly listened to everything. Casually, he said, I can do all of these, but all the punishments on her should be waived. If someone must be punished, I'll take it all on myself. The firmament stone shone and blinked for a short while. Apparently, it was delivering certain messages to Di Fui. A moment later, several characters were flashed in Di Fui's head again. As long as my lord does a good job and the world is peaceful, her punishment will be waived. Keep in mind that the heavenly laws are no child's play, the punishment has to be imposed on someone. If you give your consent, I could punish you instead, but it would surely be different. Di Fui remarked lightly, I am aware of that. No matter the punishment, I am willing to accept it. The firmament stone glowed in vehemence. It had never thought that the Lord would go so far to protect Gu Shizhou. Sigh, if only its master were here to see it. A rush of thoughts came upon it. My lord, you could actually request for my master to be reborn on this earth at a time which allows for both of you to meet once more. Di Fui paused for a while and replied faintly, let her be reborn only to see me in my sorry state again. Firmament Stone was initially puzzled but responded, so that you will not have any regrets. Di Fui hugged Gu Shizhou and walked away. If it's possible, I hope that she will not remember me in her next life and forget me completely so that she may live freely in peace. Firmament Stone was speechless. After faltering for a second, the Firmament Stone caught up to him and braced itself as it said, if she forgets about you completely, she could fall in love with someone else in the distant future. Could you live with that? Di Fui stopped for a second. Just when the Firmament Stone thought that he would respond no further, it heard a faint and raspy voice from a distance. That would be great. But if she is reborn with the memory of her past life and still remembers you or even knows the truth without any chance of making things right again, wouldn't she have to live with more regret? Di Fui froze in his tracks. Wouldn't she have to live with more regret? He was sure that she would. She loved him with her life and would sacrifice anything for him. If things would happen as the Firmament Stone had said, she would only carry her regret to the grave and let it forever be a sting in her heart. As for her memories, he would never have a way to erase it for her. Gu Shizhou sat on a pile of snow and gazed at the sky. Why hasn't she died yet? Why is she still alive? She had thought that she would die without a doubt and never expected to be reborn again. Maybe she was not even reborn, she had left her human body on this frozen land. The last image that flashed in her head before she lost consciousness was being in a state of distraught in Di Fui's embrace while her soul was escaping from her body. She sat there, contemplatively, recalling faintly that before her body was formed here, she was imprisoned inside some cloud. When she was imprisoned, she initially lacked the will to move or even think. A voice seemed to patter on incessantly near her ear, reminding her that she had broken some heavenly law and deserved to be punished or something. The babble drove her to exasperation. She wanted to shut that voice up and slap that person across the face. Then she was released from the place she was imprisoned in. And then she saw a rainbow of colors radiating from herself. After alighting, her body became full in its substance. She looked at her hand. It was smooth as silk and white as snow, with each of her fingers gracefully lithe. She looked at herself in a mirror and was astonished. The person in the reflection resembled the Gu Shizhou from before, but much more beautiful. It was as though some beauty had taken her photo in modern times and embellished it with all kinds of special effects. Her eyes shone brighter, her eyebrows more elegant, her lips as red as cherries, the contours of her lineament more beautiful. Her body seemed to be enshrouded with a layer of mist, thereby emanating a strong fairy aura. She was wearing a green skirt that gave her an air of elegance. Had Gu Shizhou become immortal? If so, what was all that torture for? A smile hung on her lips as she scanned the surrounding area. How long has it been since her death? This location looked like the place where she and Mo Zhao fought before. She stood up and walked around, finally ascertaining that this was indeed the place. The blizzard was howling furiously beside her. The stains of blood had already been concealed by the snow. There was a humanoid ice block not far away, which contained a person in it. She surged to the ice block and looked at the person in it. His debonair features and green robe made it certain that he was no other than Rong Jialua. Mo Zhao had taken over his body. After Gu Shizhou fought to the death with him, his corpse was left uncollected and just froze. Gu Shizhou put her hand on top of the block and looked at the person within. In a flash, white light began to emerge from her hand to melt the ice, rolling out Rong Jialuo's corpse. She felt a stinging ache in her heart as she bit her lips and cleaned up his face. Eldest Prince. Recalling how she used to address him in their old days, her voice was faintly hoarse. I failed to save you in the end, she cleaned up his messy hair and apparel. He was the leader of a country, and she was going to send him back to the imperial mausoleum of the Facian kingdom. Just when she was in the middle of doing so, she seemed to sense something. She raised her head and saw a middle-aged man standing not too far away. Robed in a pronounced manner, he was robust in stature and possessed handsome features that seemed to conceal a certain astuteness. It was Long Moyen, Prince Long. At this moment, he was looking at her, astonished. Their gazes met. Long Moyen asked, "Shijo?" As Gu Shijo did not look the same as she did before, he could not be certain. Gu Shijo never thought of meeting him here. You, what an elusive figure. Who would have thought that he would be here? Long Moyen took a big step toward her. Shijo, it is you. His gaze turned to Rong Jialuo's corpse on the ground, and his expression changed. Your Majesty. He looked at Rong Jialuo's wounds and tightened his fists. Who did this to you? Gu Shijo looked down at the corpse and did not answer. Rong Jialuo had died in Mo Zhao's hands, and she had killed Mo Zhao, but at the same time killed Rong Jialuo as well. Long Moyen did not cast any doubt on Gu Shijo as he had witnessed her melting the ice block and extricating his body. No matter how you look at it, it is bizarre for the emperor of a kingdom to just come here all of a sudden and die. If it had been somebody else, they would have already beleaguered Gu Shijo with questions. But Long Moyen, being Long Moyen, did not ask her anything and only stared at her. He bowed down and carried Rong Jialuo's body. I'll be taking His Majesty back. Gu Shijo naturally would not dispute with him about this and nodded her head in appreciation and acknowledgement. Thank you. Long Moyen had come here in a carriage. He placed Rong Jialuo's corpse in the cabin and invited Gu Shijo for a ride. Gu Zijia's eyes glimmered lightly. She replied swiftly, sure. Long Moyen's carriage was a wooden green chariot that was pulled by a snow-white flying lion. After the two got on the chariot, the flying lion expanded its wings and soared to the sky. Long Moyen and Gu Shijo chatted for a bit in the chariot. She finally knew that it had been half a month since her death. Long Moyen had been traveling around the earth and had come to this place in search of the gallbladder of a rare beast. He had not expected to find Gu Shijo and the now deceased emperor. Have you heard about anything unusual in your travels? Gu Shijo tried to get some information. She was still the national celestial master. Di Fui should have announced the deaths of her and Rong Jialuo after he returned. The citizens of the three kingdoms should be in a heated discussion. Long Moyen seemed surprised. What unusual stuff. Everything seems to be calm recently. Gu Shijo paused for a while. She asked, then why were you staring at me just now? She thought that he knew she died, and found it odd that there she was alive. Long Moyen sighed. Your appearance. I found it hard to identify you. Gu Shijo sat in silence for a moment. You haven't heard any news about me? Long Moyen was startled. He sighed again. I've heard some things, they should be rumors. Gu Shijo furrowed her brows. What rumors? Rumors that you're now staying at the Lord's side training attentively and disregarding all worldly affairs. Some have even said that the Lord had intentions of passing the mantle to you. Gu Shijo let out a laugh. He is the Lord and not an emperor. He can't age or die. How could he pass the mantle to anyone? This rumor is ridiculous. Long Moyen laughed as well. That's why I said rumors couldn't be trusted. Gu Shijo lowered her eyelids slightly and pondered. What is Di Fui trying to do by not announcing her death? Would he use that body to revive Lan Jinka? Did he remove the souls from it? As Di Fui could gather souls, would it not have been easy for him to retain her sense soul? Gu Shijo did not know how to examine spirits and could not detect if her sense soul was missing. She had to put the question aside. She laughed lightly in her heart at the thought of it. She had already died once and relinquished her body. She would have no ties with that person ever again. In that person's eyes, she should be already dead, right? Then she would not have to live with the identity of Gu Shijo anymore and could let go of that baggage. She could change her identity and her name and roam in this world freely. Prince Long, I have a request for you. Tell me about it. When you return, don't tell anyone about ever seeing me. Okay. Long Moyen was a bit astounded, but he was never the inquisitive type. He nodded his head and replied, all right. When he raised his head again, he was taken by surprise. Gu Shijiu seemed to have already changed her appearance. Although she still had the same attire and makeup, her appearance was vastly different than before. He thought that he was caught in an illusion. However, she was still a stunning beauty. Shijiu, this is. From now on, call me Chong Sheng. Gu Shijiu stated a name commonly used in disguises. Chong Sheng. Long Moyen's voice rose quite a few decibels, and his eyes turned brighter as well. The realization finally dawned upon Gu Shijiu. She had taken the identity of Chong Sheng and went on adventures with Long Moyen before. He still remembers Chong Sheng quite fondly. She coughed lightly and thought of a timely excuse. It's just an incognito name. Did it coincide with the name of someone you like? If so, I'll just think of another. She was not adept at coming up with names. Before she could think of a good name, Long Moyen cut her off. Don't change it anymore, this name is great. A lot of people share the same name in this world, the name suits you quite well. Gu Shijiu would retain the name. She would not stay with Long Moyen for too long anyway. After giving Rong Jialua a burial, she would disappear and seclude herself and not return to the Feishing Kingdom ever again. She could change her name again after that. Rong Jialua was already eaten by Mo Zhao, so, the person she killed was technically Mo Zhao. Anyhow, she felt sorry and guilty to Rong Jialua, especially since she treated him as her good friend. She had to attend his funeral to pay her last respect. It was a long journey from the Ice Land to the Feishing Kingdom. It would take at least 8 days to return to the capital based on the speed of Long Moyen's flying lion. That's not even taking into account the breaks they will take along the journey. Crowds of people began to appear in the distance once they left the abandoned Ice Land. In the evening of the next day, both of them finally arrived in a city and checked in to a tavern for a break. When they had some snacks in the restaurant, Gu Shijiu finally overheard someone talking about herself and the Lord. In fact, quite a number of people in the crowded restaurant were talking about the two of them. You know what? I saw the Lord's vehicle yesterday. Someone initiated a conversation in excitement. Another man at the same table immediately asked, "Are you serious? How does it look like this time? Is it the same blue crystal carriage?" Of course not. The Lord frequently changed vehicles. This time, it was a purple crystal carriage. It was so beautiful. Sigh, I don't have many words to describe it. The first man sounded very excited. Which one of the Lord's vehicles have been ugly? What's there to be so surprised? Someone at the other table nearby interrupted. True. Oh right, did you see the National Celestial Master in the Lord's carriage? Someone asked all of a sudden. Of course. She was in the cabin. Although they did not come out, the crystal carriage was transparent, so I could see her. The man could not stop talking. Everyone was in a heated discussion. Long Moyen took a glimpse at Gu Shijiu and then pretended to ask the witness. May I know when you saw the Lord's carriage? It was yesterday's evening. The man answered confidently. Long Moyen had bumped into Gu Shijiu yesterday, before evening. He paused for a moment and then continued, Are you sure the lady inside the carriage was the National Celestial Master? Of course. Other than Miss Gu, who else is qualified to take the same carriage with the Lord? They were not only taking the same carriage, the Lord even wrapped Miss Gu in one of his arms. Although he could not see their features clearly, he could see their figures. Undoubtedly, no one had the guts to judge the Lord, and they definitely did not dare to talk about the fact that he had such an intimate interaction with a lady. Long Moyen took a glimpse at Gu Shijiu again. She remained silent and sipped a mouthful of alcohol as a smile grew on her face. It seemed that Di Fui had resurrected Lan Jinka. They even openly took a stroll on the street intimately. Perhaps, he wanted the citizens to support her, and he wanted to acknowledge her as his partner publicly. However, why he did not reinstate her original identity? What was on his mind to let her live with Gu Zijia's name? Perhaps, Lan Jingke was willing to be Gu Shijiu since she accepted the body. But Lan Jingke was also someone with a high ego. Was she really willing to live with someone else's name? In a similar manner, Gu Shijiu did not want to live with Lan Jingke's identity, even though it meant that she could be the empress of the mermaid kingdom and she could easily get all the power of the mermaids. The pain inside was tearing her apart again. She took another sip of alcohol so that she could swallow the bitterness in her throat. Suddenly, there was chaos outside when she was quietly pondering. Someone cheered with surprise, "Look! The Lord's vehicle! The Lord is here again." There were many people praying outside, hence, it was very crowded. The people continuously kowtowed while facing the statue in the temple as they repeatedly asked for blessings. Some were praying to get pregnant, some were praying for wealth, some were praying for love. Everyone wanted something. The scene was nothing unusual to Gu Shijiu because she had seen it multiple times in the current and modern era. She was curious who they were praying to, and her gaze finally fell on the beautiful and fine fairy statue. She had seen many statues of different immortals. Some were ferocious, some looked very kind and gentle, some looked very handsome. However, she has never seen such a beautiful and realistic statue. To her surprise, it was a statue of herself. It was of the finest quality and perhaps looked better than the real person. Gu Shijiu never imagined someone would make a statue of her and that people would worship and pray to her as if she was a fairy. There was a title for this deity under the feet of the statue, the Great Celestial Master Gu. Celestial Master Gu. Was it not supposed to be Celestial Master Lan Jingke? Was that specially made for Gu Shijiu? Was that a compensation for her because he felt guilty? She heard that the credit temple could help to accumulate blessings for the person who was worshipped and prayed to by the citizens, hence, it would bring her good fortune. Only those great people who have made significant contributions to society and saved the people from disaster deserved such a credit temple. The citizens would usually build a temple for them after they passed away so that they could continue to hear their prayers and receive their praise and gratitude. In fact, Neza, 1, killed himself due to the threats of the Dragon King from the Eastern Sea. Thus, his mother built a credit temple for him so that he could receive prayers and blessings in order to be reborn again in the future. Was Di Fui planning for her to be reborn? Was that something he would really want? Suddenly, tears rolled down her cheek. She seemed to recall the moment her souls were broken into pieces and Di Fui rushed in to catch them. At that point, she could not really hear everything that was said by Di Fui, but she remembered that he was sobbing. She remembered that some warm water spilled on her face, and that was probably his tears. Di Fui was always a strong person, he probably never cried before. Even during their time together, she has never seen it. However, he really cried when he hugged her in his embrace. His body was trembling when he hugged her. She remembered he was shouting her name. She knew that he liked her and she never denied it. However, she did not want him to be in a difficult position and she did not want to see his hair turn white. After all, he has been planning for Lan Jingke's resurrection for so many years. Gu Shijiu was having a complicated feeling as she continued to look at the statue. She felt a combination of bittersweet feelings inside. "Baby, look, does it look like you? I made this by myself." She was shocked when she suddenly heard Di Fui's voice. She looked at Di Fui by following the direction of his voice. He was sitting on a crossbeam up there with her physical body placed on his lap. He was whispering beside the body as he wrapped one of his hands around her waist. Apparently, he made himself invisible. Thus, none of the prayers saw him. Di Fui lowered his voice when he spoke to the physical body on his lap. No one could hear him, especially since it was very noisy in the temple. However, Gu Shijiu could hear it, and she could hear it clearly. Gu Shijiu was now standing right beside the statue. She even thought Di Fui was looking at her when he fixed his eyes on the statue. She immediately went stiff and quickly moved away. She took a glimpse at Di Fui and realized he was still looking at the statue without moving his gaze away. Perhaps, he could not see her. Gu Shijiu had no idea whether she should heave a sigh of relief or feel disappointed. She felt depressed whenever she saw him because he broke her heart. Thus, she did not want to see him anymore. However, she had a strange feeling this time around. Di Fui made a statue for her and even asked the body whether the statue looked similar to her. Thus, did he think about Gu Shijiu or Lan Jinke when he hugged the lifeless body in his arms? She circled around the statue once again and turned back to check on Di Fui. She realized he was idling as he stared at the statue. In front of him, there was a 7-colored bracelet floating in the air. The bracelet was blinking as if it was talking to Di Fui. Little Tsang. It was the firmament stone. What was Di Fui saying to Little Tsang? Gu Shijiu went closer to them, but unfortunately, they were using directed audio to communicate. Thus, she could never hear it no matter how close she was to them. In contrast, since she was too near to Di Fui, she smelled the unique fragrance from his body again. She felt an ache in her heart and quickly moved away. She took a look at the firmament stone again. Bast *RD. It even claimed that it was meant to be hers. However, it could not even sense her despite being so close to her. She could not help but take a glimpse at Di Fui again. He was still idling and his gaze was occupied with grief. He sighed softly. In fact, I really want to see her again, even if it's just once. It'll feel better as long as she's alright. Unfortunately, it would never happen anymore. His voice was extremely hoarse and he sounded helpless. Gu Shijiu felt sorry for him. Suddenly, a question popped up in her head. Who was the one he mentioned earlier? Why did he say would never happen anymore? The firmament stone was still talking to Di Fui. It was the one who suggested the credit temple as it might help to accelerate Gu Zijia's rebirth. In fact, they could simply get some workers to build the statue. However, Di Fui insisted to make it by himself. He made 81 statues in half a month and got people to build 81 credit temples around the continent. Certainly, he was very fussy with the location of the credit temples. Fortunately, all the credit temples were built in time with the Lord's order. Di Fui was extremely busy in the past half a month. Even the firmament stone did not see him taking any breaks. The wooden statues made by the Lord was full of spiritual power. Thus, the people were amazed by the statues when they came to the credit temples. Certainly, they would burn more incense and pray sincerely. All the temples were fully occupied. According to Firmament Stone, Di Fui could bring Gu Zijia's body for a stroll in the temple when the temple was occupied by incense and prayers. She would receive their blessings when she smelled it and would be reborn earlier. Compared to the old times, Di Fui would definitely think it was nonsense if the Firmament Stone suggested such things. However, this time around, he just followed whatever instructions were given by Firmament Stone and he even tried his best to execute them. The Firmament Stone was fortunate enough to enjoy its role as an instructor for half a month. Its heart was racing and it even felt accomplished when it ordered the Lord around. Di Fui was asking the Firmament Stone for the approximate time that Gu Shijiu would be reborn. The Firmament Stone told him it would be in another 60 years after making a prediction based on its experience. 60 years was once a very short period to Di Fui, however, it was now a time period he would not be alive to experience. They would not be able to see each other again. He looked at the girl in his embrace and realized that he would never ever get to see her standing in front of him alive and talk to him with laughter. His fingers were gently touching her lashes. Softly, he whispered, "Shijiu, forget about me when you come back, and live a good life after that." Gu Shijiu was shocked. She was furious when she heard the first part of his sentence. He always wanted to be forgotten. Who or what did he think she was? A computer hard disk? Did he think she could just simply delete all the data in her head whenever she wanted? However, fear crept into her heart when she heard the last few words. He sounded like he was speaking to her for the last time. Or was she overthinking? She quickly took a glimpse at him again. He did not wear a mask today, and it was probably because he was invisible. Gu Shijiu noticed his face looked very pale even though his white hair was now black again. Besides that, there were 2 dark circles under his eyes and his lips were pale as well. Gu Shijiu wanted to check his pulse, but she realized that she probably would not be able to touch him. Was he too exhausted? It was rare to see him in such a pale appearance. While she was still idling, a sudden noise was heard. It was the voice of a lady. "Oh, what kind of temple is this?" "Celestial Master Gu's temple." "Which Celestial Master Gu?" Certainly, Gu Shijiu was very familiar with this voice. That was Lan Jingyi. She did not expect her to come. There were many prayers outside the temple and also a few young Taoists guarding the temple. The young Taoist answered, "This is National Celestial Master, Miss Gu." Lan Jingyi chuckled sarcastically. "Gu Shijiu? Are you sure? She is still alive, so why did you build a temple for her?" The young Taoist was slightly pissed. "I hope you watch your words. I know Celestial Master Gu is still alive, this is her credit temple." Lan Jingyi shouted with a high pitch, "Credit temple? What honor does she have to own a credit temple? This is absurd. Let me take a closer look." "Hey! Jingyi, don't be reckless." Lan Yaoguang just arrived, however, he did not manage to supervise his sister properly. Shua! A blue shadow flashed and Lan Jingyi appeared in the inner hall. She seemed to have recovered because she looked completely fine except for her pale face. Gu Shijiu took a glimpse at Di Fui. He has straightened his body but had a frown on his face. He looked upset. Lan Jingyi was so angry as she fixed her eyes on the deity statue. Gu Shijiu is definitely too arrogant. My brother Huang is such a mighty man and he doesn't even have one. Who does she think she is? The Lord of the world. She is not even worth a speck of dust in my eyes. I just can't look at her arrogant face. She lifted her sleeve and a blue beam was emitted toward the statue. She was going to destroy the statue. She was known for acting recklessly. It was too sudden and the young Taoist did not have time to stop her. Even if he was prepared, there was nothing he could possibly do since Lan Jingyi was much more powerful. Lan Yaoguang just rushed in and did not manage to stop her either. He shouted, "No!" Lan Jingyi possessed a spiritual power of level 9, hence, it was disastrous whenever she launched an attack. If her attacks were accurate, even the dome of the temple would be blown away, not to mention a statue. The wind was blowing furiously with an evil aura. Right before the blue ray hit the statue, a colorful ray suddenly flashed in from nowhere and engulfed the blue ray. The blue ray faded away as the colorful ray shattered it into pieces. In addition, the colorful ray was now headed toward Lan Jingyi. It was as if a colorful dragon crashed right into Lan Jingyi's face. She was too stunned to do anything. Ah! A loud scream was heard followed by Lan Jingyi's body being thrown out of the temple. Bang! Lan Jingyi seemed to have crashed onto something as the leaves from a big tree outside the temple fell all over the floor. Everyone was stunned. No one knew where the colorful ray came from. Was it the statue? The people in the temple quickly knelt and kowtowed in front of the statue after a short idle. Lan Yaoguang trembled and looked at the direction of the crossbeam. Brother Huang, a man slowly showed up in midair. He was wearing a snowy white robe with a mask that covered his face. There was a 7-colored auspicious glow around his body with an extremely strong aura. The Lord? That's the Lord. Oh God! That's the Lord. The Lord came to this temple. Initially, the people in prayer were still stunned. After a while, they quickly knelt and kowtowed to him when they regained their consciousness. Di Fui looked at the people from midair. Slowly, he said, "Listen to this order, whoever tries to destroy a single piece of tile or a tiny grass of this temple shall not be spared." "Yes, my lord." The young Taoists who were kneeling on the ground responded with eyes that sparkled. Who had the guts to disobey the Lord's order? A temple protected by the Lord's order was certainly an important venue, hence, this temple of Celestial Master Gu would be more crowded than any other temples. Of course, no one would ever try to destroy anything from now on. Although there was a rumor saying that the Lord had done all the inspection by himself throughout the process of building all these temples, it was just a rumor. Many people did not believe it, and they even thought that it was just a marketing strategy made by the person who built the temples. However, since the Lord showed up here and he even ordered them to protect the temples, the news would be spread very fast. Lan Yaoguang hesitated as he looked at Di Fui. Brother Huang, you build these temple for my sister? My sincere apologies, Jingyi was too naive, please forgive her. Di Fui did not bother him. Casually, he said, take Lan Jingyi in. Gu Shijiu was curious as she was hiding up there. Di Fui used to protect Lan Jingyi and he even cited her in front of Gu Shijiu several times. Gu Shijiu was very sad back then, however, what was different this time? Lan Jingyi just wanted to destroy a statue and he launched such a powerful attack. Gu Shijiu guessed that the attack from Di Fui earlier might have taken away half of Lan Jingyi's life. Suddenly, Lan Jingyi was taken in by someone. Di Fui's attack took away 2/3 of her life because she had transformed back to her original form. She was lying on the greenstone trail in her mermaid form. The crowd immediately screamed and cheered. Oh, it was a mermaid. It was a rare species and they finally saw a living one. The mermaids usually turned into human form when they went up to the land. Therefore, the citizens of the continent could not see their original form. However, there was one that just flew out from the temple. They certainly need to take a look since it was so rare. In the end, the crowd piled around and made up to 6 circles. Lan Jingyi's face was very red and she was embarrassed. Her arm was broken and 7 to 8 of her scales had detached from her tail. She almost passed out when she landed and she could not even move now. She wanted to kill everyone who laughed at her, but she also wished to escape at the same time. Certainly, she wanted to find the one who attacked her, hence, she immediately shouted when she regained her consciousness. Who was the **RD who attacked me just now? I'll definitely get Brother Huang to kill you. Before she finished, she realized someone had pulled on her tail. Mu Feng was very gentle. I'm sorry, the Lord asked me to take you in. Lan Jingyi suddenly laid her head down. She was very angry and ready to struggle. However, she went stiff when she heard what Mu Feng said. What? Mu Feng did not speak anymore. The prayers outside the temple looked at each other and then quickly rushed to the doorstep. As they saw the Lord floating in midair, they quickly knelt on the ground. They would rather kneel than miss the drama. Lan Jingyi tried to struggle out from Mu Feng's grasp. Let go. A man and a woman are not supposed to have physical contact. Mu Feng had no choice. Fine. He immediately let go and Lan Jingyi slumped to the ground. Once again, she experienced pain. If Lan Yaoguang did not manage to support her a little, her head would have crashed on the floor. Lan Yaoguang was in a difficult position as well. He was the emperor of the Mermaid Kingdom and his sister was his noble princess. He would have been pissed off a long time ago if his sister was being bullied like this before today. However, it was his sister's fault and the one punished her was the Lord. He did not dare to speak more but took a glimpse at his sister and then looked at the Lord. He wanted to seek forgiveness on behalf of Lan Jingyi. Brother Huang, Di Fui shifted his gaze to him. Although it was a very simple reply, that was scary enough to make Lan Yaoguang tremble until he almost could not continue the conversation. Jingyi is still young and naive, could you forgive her, and spare her life this one time? Young and naive? Di Fui sounded unpredictable. 5,000 years old is still considered naive? The crowd who were kneeling burst into laughter. Someone chuckled and replied, 5,000 years old could be considered a great ancestor already. Great nanny, someone beside him said, she's a mermaid and she's different from you. Don't simply judge. There was immediate chaos as everyone was talking about it. Lan Jingyi was too arrogant earlier. She behaved as if she was the almighty god just because she was a princess among the mermaids, and that pissed the crowd off. Therefore, they were more than happy to laugh at her now. Lan Jingyi struggled to get up and lifted her head to glimpse at Di Fui with a look of disbelief. Bro. Brother-in-law, why did you do this to me? I just wanted to destroy a wooden statue. Gu Shijiu is still alive, but she built a credit temple for herself. How could you allow it? Even you don't have one, brother-in-law. The Lord was the brother-in-law of this princess mermaid? It was definitely breaking news to the ordinary people. At this moment, everyone was looking at each other with a shocked expression. Lan Yaoguang just could not wait to shut his sister's mouth up. He immediately yelled, Jingyi. Shut up. Shijiu is also our sister. She's not. Di Fui suddenly interrupted Lan Yaoguang. Lan Yaoguang glimpsed at Di Fui with his mouth wide open. Brother Huang, I thought you told us that Shijiu was reincarnated from one of my sister's souls. She has nothing to do with Lan Jinka. Di Fui casually continued, she's always been herself, no one else. Lan Jinka has passed away, and she is truly dead, just like how the other mermaids' souls have broken into pieces. She will never be reborn again. Lan Yaogang's face turned pale, and he took a step back. How is it possible? Brother Huang, I thought you said, Lan Jinka was worried about you and your sister, and she was afraid that you might end up doing something silly as a result of depression, hence, she begged me to design a lie so that you will have something as your mental support. Di Fui explained in an icy tone. Lan Yaoguang stuttered, but, there is nothing much for you to argue with me. Yaoguang, I'll definitely take care of you and your sister since I've promised your eldest sister to do so when she passed away during the battle. That's also why I helped you to manage all the administrative works of the Mermaid Kingdom and even helped you to ascend the throne. In fact, I've already repaid your sister since you have already dominated the entire ocean for more than 5,000 years. Lan Yaoguang remained silent. That was true. The Lord had been supporting him for a few thousand years, and he made the Mermaid Kingdom grow stronger than ever before. He also helped the Mermaid clan to kill all its enemies. Even though Lan Jinka had helped the Lord before, he has more than repaid them. It was now the mermaids who owed the Lord. Lan Yaoguang was a smart person, hence, he finally understood after a short ponder. The Lord probably wanted the mermaids to be loyal and take good care of Gu Zijia's body. Hence, he claimed that Gu Shijiu was actually reincarnated from Lan Jinka. Upon this realization, he took a step back and glimpsed at the Lord. He sighed. Brother Huang, in fact, I'd still safeguard her body properly even if you didn't tell me Miss Gu was reincarnated from my sister. Di Fui's eyelashes flashed. I'm sorry about this. It was his selfishness because he wanted Gu Shijiu to have strong support when she woke up. However, Di Fui never expected things to go in such a different direction. She felt hopeless and eventually decided to die with Mo Zhao just to fulfill his wish. Although he was now apart from her and she might not know all these things he had done for her, she would be reborn someday in the future. Therefore, he might as well help her to solve all the problems while he was still alive. Based on her capabilities, she might not even need to rely on the mermaid's power to unite this continent and rule it. Conservatively, even if she really needs the power from the mermaids, she would have her own strategies and did not have to become their empress. Lan Yaoguang finally got it as he thought about it. He had a strange feeling because it was undeniable that the Lord had used him. However, compared to the contributions made by the Lord, the exploitation was hardly comparable.